and welcome to Maintaining Frame number 98. What's scary about population collapse? I'm your host, Allison, and with me is the very intrepid and determined Brian, who's still with us and still attempting to to stay in the game despite having a bit of a laryngeal technical difficulty ongoing.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So,
I have not given up. I'm gonna keep going. No.
He's gonna keep going. He's gonna make sure that we get these streams out. But I will attempt to talk twice as much.
So that I don't think that's necessary.
You don't think it's necessary? No, it's just an eventuality. It's not necessary. You know. Now that you have a handicap, I'm going to take advantage and do even more of the talking. All right, so this is a video that was requested by The Great Indoors in exchange for essentially supporting the fundraiser. Which, if you guys want to do that, just message me on Discord if you're part of the Discord, and we can arrange something. This is tell me about this individual who is being interviewed here, Brian, because
Louise Perry.
Yeah, Louise Perry. But
so I kind of had she's basically been making the rounds recently, making a lot of appearances, talking about her book, but also her strong feelings about the consequences of the sexual revolution. Also, she doesn't call it the second wave feminist movement. Maybe she thinks they're separate things. I'm not sure. I think they were intertwined. But she is, she used to be a feminist. I have a little bit of her early life thing. So Louise Perry graduated from University of London's SOAS with a bachelor's degree in anthropology, reported to have included women's studies. At this time, she is said to have conformed with the views of her peers that, basically she was a sex positive feminist, believed that porn is great, BDSM is fun, sex work is real work, etc. However, her views changed after university. And she wrote a book called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, that was published in 2022, and she's been making the rounds, appearing on the Lotus Eaters and Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom, and now today on Triggernometry. I think she may have been on there before as well. And I mean, yeah, that's basically the short version of it. She's okay. There's some things that she says that I like. I think that she's afraid to sort of name names. Yeah. I mean, it's a normal thing, but I mean, she is identifying the issues. And I watched this video. I did watch the whole thing, and I'm glad it's broken up into sections. And I will say that it was a bit of a roller coaster, because there were things that I was like, yes, I agree with that. I think that's solid. And then there were things that made me want to pull my hair out, but not in a shocking way. It's again,
frustrating.
It's frustrating because everybody needs a little bit more time, and they'll get there,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Let her cook.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I think the Triggernometry guys honestly were more frustrating than she was, because they really wanted to figure out how to blame men some more, so I mean, I'm not saying men shouldn't take the blame for something, but it's kind of retarded that we're still doing that, because it's here's an algebraic formula, x plus 2 equals y, and now it's all I want to do is solve for y. That's what they're doing. It's we can't solve the problem that way. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, if indeed women have responsibility, you can't get anywhere by continuing to blame men. This is
yeah.
simple factor. And the thing is that it's really difficult for men to invent what women are going to select from them. Does that make sense? Like, and it's also, there's this huge elephant in the room that people don't want to acknowledge. And that is that women place significant selection pressure on men. Now, because we are more of a pair bonding species, there's also selection pressure that's placed on women. But for the most part, the evolutionary selective pressure is placed on women on men, by women on men. Okay, and that's just the simple way of putting it. Why does the peacock have such an elaborate tail? Because it's been selected for by the peahen. So it's and this is something that we seem to really struggle with in our society, that women have the power of selection. They select the men who end up having children, and over time that exerts a significant force, social force and evolutionary force. If you step back far enough, it exerts a significant evolutionary force. And when we're dealing with a situation that the problem is what women are selecting for in men is counterproductive to a functioning society, then it is extremely difficult for men to decide what women are going to select for in them. See what I'm saying? Like I don't think that there is a society in which men have made that. And part of the reason why is because, there's a certain aspect of male psychology that they want to be held to a standard. And if they're inventing the standard that they're held to, it feels really fake. It's like that whole Guy Smiley self-affirmation stuff. I'm awesome because I have lived up to the standard that I've invented for myself, and it feels fake. Like someone was saying in the comments, I think it was Quicksilver Tongue, getting approval from yourself or getting approval from someone else is like finding, $20 on the ground. Getting approval from yourself is like finding out your money is counterfeit in your wallet. So it doesn't have the same kind of emotional worth to it. So so that's sort of like a little bit of my spiel. It's why we seem to really struggle with a basic fact of biology, which is the female tends to put selective pressure on the male, and human beings are no less part of biology when it comes to that. And that not saying that is an ought to be. I'm just saying it's an is.
Yeah.
And if we deny it, then we get into these endless kind of problems with assigning blame, because if we essentially say, well, it's men who construct all of society and all of the social pressures and this selective pressure that women place on men is purely socialized, then again it just goes back to, well, men have decided to put this pressure on them from women arbitrarily, and well, what do we do then? I guess men have to stop doing that.
Yeah.
It seems like that's gonna be difficult. That's guys, just stop making women put selective pressure on you. Stop making women not choose you. Just stop that. That's all you need to do. Just figure out how to, just stop doing that. Yeah. So anyway, let's get into it a bit.
So let's get into it. First, I want to tell you what sections you want to do the things, and I'll tell you what sections there are. Yeah. And you can decide which one piques your interest the most.
Oh, you're going to present the tapas, and I shall do the selection. All right. So once again, we are doing our monthly fundraiser at feedthebadger.com/support. So if you want to help us out, you can do so there, so we can continue to bring you this delectable content. And if you want to send us a message at any point throughout the show, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. That's the very best way to send us whatever funds you would like to tip us with. And it's the very best way for you to avoid sending your comments through the YouTube comment system, comment minefield, shall we say.
Comment filtration system.
Comment frustration system. And
I said filtration, but frustration.
Does frustration not work too, though?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so you could go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip, and that's pretty much the only way you could send us a comment through Twitter, because I have no idea how Twitter's comments work at all, and we have not figured that out. As far as I know, you put a comment on Twitter and then it just gets eaten by an alligator, because I have no idea where they pop up. But if you are on Twitter listening to us now and you do want to send us a comment, the very best way, once again, is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. All right, let's get into it. Let's get started in.
So, Louise Perry on this interview, by the way, is quite pregnant. So she is promoting natalism. And let's see. There is a section called The Signal of Luxury Beliefs, which is where I think it sort of reflects what we have talked about, how, you know, we live in this very comfortable society. And so these we live in a time of beliefs that are you know, only possible when everything is doing so well, and it actually kind of creates a problem. But here's one that I thought was interesting. It's called Why Society Shames Single Mothers, which just raises my eyebrows a lot. So do you want to go with that one?
Okay, so let me just take a look at this.
And there's society's view of unfaithful men. Is monogamy best for women? Are people having less sex? The issues coming from medication. So they're talking about the pill and SSRIs and the effects of that. Why natalism is so controversial. Yeah, it is. It's considered right wing.
Okay, and I said basically we'd cover the first half because there's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, let me think. Let's
or we can just go to relationship between the sexes as one of the first ones. That could be a good one too.
I want to go. Let's do this in a little reverse order just to shake it up. Let's go to why is natalism so controversial, and then we'll get back into the Let's hear.
All right, let's. We're gonna play some of that. Let me switch scenes here so that you guys can see what we're looking at. And here we go.
That's fascinating to me because if you look into it for about 3 seconds, you instantly get like you can be shown one graph and you suddenly like get everything, right?
They're talking about the replacement rates and the birth rates.
So it's pretty, it's pretty startling.
Yeah, you know that thing that when I was on Wick, they told me wasn't happening and that I was like blowing out of proportion. It's not a big deal. Yeah, that thing.
Well, I mean, it's not even the replacement rate. Well, if you mean by replacement of people actually having children to replace themselves, yeah. Because they'll get into, this is the great... No, it isn't the great replacement.
I mean people in a given country having children, like Japanese people making Japanese babies, not a bunch of people who are not Japanese moving into Japan. Because...
But that doesn't solve the problem long term.
No, in fact, it actually just makes Japan disappear. I mean, you'll still have people, but you won't have Japan anymore.
Okay, I mean, even if you bring in people from, I believe that they're going for Nigerians to go into Japan. When the Nigerians get into Japan, they become naturalized in some cases, and for the most part, and they have the same problem within a couple generations, that they stop having children. So even when you import people, you're not even going to end up replacing anyone. Like, this is what's happening. This is what you see. People are going to these other countries, so they're importing immigrants, but the immigrants stop having kids. So, I mean, if you're worried about the immigrants replacing the native populations, that actually probably won't happen, because as soon as they naturalize to any degree, they stop having kids. So it's just, you're going to have to keep importing immigrants, and they naturalize, they stop having kids. They're not going to be replacing anyone because they have the same, they're adopting the same problem that we have. So it's ultimately, immigration is no solution. I mean, it's in the short term, it might buoy up your economy, but in the long term, you're just going to have to keep bringing more people in. And what happens is that what seems to be happening is that culturally there gets to be more and more difference on each successive wave of immigration. And then you also end up bringing in people from countries that don't agree. and or have inherent conflicts between those two countries, and they bring those conflicts in. So it's destabilizing, it's destructive, and it's ultimately not solving the problem, because the problem is in some aspect of Western culture. And it, as soon as the immigrants come in and they naturalize, they have the same problem. So they're not actually solving it. Immigration isn't solving it. And I don't think that immigration is actually going to lead to the replacement of native populations, because, like I said, as soon as the new people come into the country, they naturalize to the degree where they stop having children. So we need to solve this, because there is no solution. That's what the people on WIC were saying. The men on WIC were saying, "Oh, we'll just bring people in." And then when I said, "But that doesn't solve it, because they naturalize and then have the same problem of not having children," they I don't know if they were ironically suggesting it, but they said, "Well, we'll just turn Africa into a breeding colony." You remember that?
Yeah, I think they were joking, but I mean, it's because they didn't really want to look at this question seriously, and so instead they were like, "Well, we'll just do that." But my point is, it doesn't really contradict yours. Is that using Japan as an example? Not only are you not solving the problem by bringing in people from another country, because they also are going to end up adapting, a lot of that mentality, and they're going to stop reproducing as well, or at least they're going to stagnate in the same way. But you're also going to erase what is Japan, which is the culture and the people. And on top of that, of the ones that do adopt that that national identity, they will also be disappear, and so what will be left is the people who did not naturalize, that decided to keep having babies. So you're still going to change the country completely. And I use Japan as an example because I didn't bring it up with the WIC people because of my voice, but I think that if I did it that way, it would be harder for them to make a defense of than if I said the United States, because it's okay to say that about the United States, but I can't say that about some, foreign country that has a rich culture that everyone loves. And I'm like, well, what if it disappeared? Like, what if Italy was just gone? Would you miss it?
It's also destroying the other thing is that in this equation, when they talk about the replacement theory, and like I said, I think that what we're talking about is much more nuanced than that. But you're also destroying the places that you're importing from, especially if you are solve the problem.
Yeah, it's double damage.
They've been joking, but although honestly, if they don't engage with the concept, then how is it joking? They're just like,
right? No, I don't.
If you import from Africa, like you're taking the best from that culture, you're bringing them in, and they stop breeding, and then what happens to Africa?
Right.
And what happens?
It goes both ways, right? Yeah,
it goes both ways. It's very destructive both ways.
Yeah.
There isn't the people who could provide the greatest solutions for their cultures in Africa aren't there, or in certain areas of Africa, and and they aren't continuing their culture. They're just coming here and losing their culture. We're losing. It's not a solution. It's not a long-term solution, because it doesn't deal with the problem of people breeding. And ultimately, if it's all across the world, which is what's happening. I mean, look at the numbers from, I think it's the Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah, those African nations. If you look at the statistics on births over the last few years, for using the Democratic Republic of Congo, they've gone from over 6 babies to 6. And that's only in 3 years. So they've gone from 6.25 to 6. So they're going down too. And it's increasing. So we're already below replacement in a lot of countries around the world. And even the countries that are above replacement are headed down. So this is an issue all around the world.
Yeah.
So even bringing in people is not going to solve that. What happens when the DRC is below replacement? You can't be bringing babies from Africa if the African people are no longer having babies too. Like and once they get even lower, once they get below like 4 babies per woman, they can no longer send immigrants. Like they can no longer shore up other cultures, flagging population. I mean, they need to actually keep, what I'm getting at is they need to actually keep more than a replacement rate, because then they need to have children to send to other countries so that they can keep a replacement rate. It's ridiculous. It's something that we need to solve. And it's just simply, women are not, the average woman is not attracted to the average man in the system, in the like the modern economic system.
Yep.
And that is a problem. That is not something you can put on men, because men don't choose the selective pressure that women put on them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. So this is a situation like, how do we get to the place where the average woman is attracted to the average man again, and they want to have children? Like, how do we get there? What do we need to do?
Right.
Otherwise, we're basically, this is going to be the end of the human race. And for those of you who are like, oh, live long, die out. Well, the unraveling of our technology and our civilization at this point, that's going to be a species, like a earth-wide holocaust. Like we can't afford that at this point. Like we're for the stars or bust at this point. But so we cannot just be like, let's just let the human race die out. The Earth is now basically a cyborg, and we constitute part of their its cyborg parts. And if you get rid of them, well, I mean, it will probably survive in the long term. Like, it survived the asteroid impact, but we're going to be looking at some serious environmental degradation or destruction, and a lot of loss of species. So, it's not so, don't be so blasé about, live long, die out. Yeah, don't be so blasé about that. It will have significant consequences. I mean,
we should
I guess
probably watch some of the video.
Really. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We should watch the video. Okay, so let's get into this.
Our
Well, I did say I
population,
would talk
particularly in
twice as
Western
much.
countries, but not just in Western countries, is just way below replacement. And Francis was talking. We were having lunch, and he was talking about the fact that teachers are getting fired from schools now because there's not enough kids.
And
Restructuring.
Yeah, particularly in central London, there's loads of schools closing down.
So you've got that going on, and yet whenever I see any politician who's like, maybe like Miriam Cates says, whatever you think about the rest of her politics or whatever, she just says we need to talk about babies. And suddenly, like, the swarm of rage descends upon them. The same with, look, I don't know much about Viktor Orban. I read bad things about him in the papers. Okay, let's assume that they're all true. But still, like, why is this such a controversial subject to say, hey, we're not having enough children, and maybe we should think about ways of encouraging people?
Because it puts us on blaming women.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it is like, well, I think the ant, like when he says that this woman said, hey, we should probably start having babies, and he said there was a wave of rage, he didn't get specific, but I'm willing to bet it was mostly, if not entirely, women that did it, or the men who, simp for them. Kind of like when we were talking about AI girlfriends, and I said, well, men would probably rather have a real woman. And they were like, no, women are free now and they can choose. And, they just have standards, and men aren't meeting those standards. It was like this whole, please don't do there. It's too sensitive. And I'm just like, well, and I think that's what happened here too. It is verboten to bring this up. So
well, there's a couple things. First of all, a commentator said you should really lean into the Godfather voice.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I can't. The sound of my own voice is
aggravating.
I don't know. It's just like I'm trying to just talk low like this.
My daughter's wedding. You just go like
you
that.
Come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. I'm gonna give you an
Okay.
offer you can't refuse.
The other thing is I wanted to like the Wick's panel is really interesting because I got the feeling like a lot of the impetus behind that is if women aren't held to a standard, then men aren't either. So that we can just live a life of pure indulgence, as the beautiful people in the mouse utopia. And so the idea that we don't actually look at the fact that men are selected for by women. So women establish this standard. We don't actually look at that. Means that for the most part, men don't have to uphold or live up to a standard. And I think that might be attractive to certain types of men. I don't want to, and I can get it. Like, society has asked so much of men that maybe they deserve a vacation. Just walk off, and just have, However, I don't think the type of guy who is interested in that kind of, or having that, or recognizing that as a break for men really is interested in, I think that they tend to be very female focused for whatever reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, you can't put any pressure on women. You can't blame women. You can't put women, any kind of expectations on women. Any kind of external standard that you hold women up to is misogyny, dread misogyny, all of that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just find that really interesting that there's that conflation. Like these guys who seem to want to not be held to a standard also are very gynocentric in a way, and they use that as an excuse. Yeah,
they want to hold they want to hold other men to standards though. They have all the courage in the world when it comes to that. When it comes to like saying we need men to step up. Man is it's so stunning and brave. It's stunning and brave
and radical.
Very radical. Albert Nader Retro gave us $2 Canadian and said, "You sound a little better today, Brian." I can't really tell. It's like every morning I get up and I talk to Jojo because he's the only guy that's up with me, and I hear myself and I think I'm getting better, and then like within an hour I sound like this again. So I don't know. Anyway, let's play some more of this.
To reproduce the society in which they live.
Why do people think it's inherently fascist? Yeah. I mean, it's worth saying that basically every...
It's because they're anti-human. Ultimately, there seemed to be a push for anti-natalism and breaking, fighting men and women since before the 1960s, but it really picked up steam around that time. And I don't think it's slowing down, and they will use any narrative to promote it. I mean, they'll say, if you have kids, it's bad for the environment. Why would you want to bring up children in this crazy world? And they'll make the world crazy, and then they'll tell you shouldn't have kids in it. I mean, there is a significant and overt push to keep men and women apart from each other, suspicious of each other, hating each other, fighting with each other, and not making babies with each other, in competition with each other. It's in every aspect. And in many ways, women embrace that. They like the idea of like being a girl boss. It appeals to them. There is not really an opposite or a mirror of that for men that men find appealing enough that they go along with it. So, I mean, there's a Louise Perry. Sorry, I'm going to get her name wrong. She does say that she thinks this is anti-human at the end of the day. But that's later on in this show. This is like towards the end that she says that.
Country cares about this up until 5 minutes ago.
Right.
There used to be this line in Australia encouraging people to have more children, that it was you have one for mum, one for dad, and one for Australia, encouraging people to have 3 kids. So it's definitely not, I mean, it's also the case that like Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia and so on encourages high fertility. That doesn't mean that
amongst certain groups.
Yes, that doesn't mean that natalism is unique to authoritarian regimes by any means. It's basically
Well, it's super obvious that is not like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union wanted babies because they needed soldiers. That's it. And they probably wanted to be a majority, but that doesn't have anything to do with, like, human beings existing is not, or should not be political. But again, the feminist left makes it political for whatever reason. So, Nerd Tard, he's on our vertical, so he's not like a normal. Hi, Nerd Tard. I'm only highlighting your comment because I saw that you're on the shorts version of this show. And he says, why don't you have Rachel Wilson on? I've emailed her many times. I was talking to her last year. I talked about her book. She was willing to come on. She hasn't replied to me in a while. Maybe she's gotten really busy. I sent her an email the other day, actually, that was kind of a poke, like, hey, if you want to come on. But I haven't heard from her, so thank you for asking. I know who she is. I've read her book. But yeah, I haven't heard from her, so.
Yeah, it's ultimately up to the individual in question if they want to respond.
Yeah, we reach out to people all the time, and sometimes they get back to us. Usually what happens is, though, they come on the show and then they blow up after, and then we never hear from them again. Like Blair White and, Sydney Watson and Lauren Chan when she was called Roaming Millennial. Like these, that's lots of people who have made an appearance and then they just go, oh, Aiden Paladin. I discovered her when her channel was kind of small.
But she hasn't disappeared.
No, I mean, I haven't, I haven't talked to her in a bit, but I'm just saying that's the way that it tends to go. So if you want the Midas touch, make an appearance on Honey Badger Radio. And we'll send you through the stratosphere and wave from, the planet. Yeah, from the depths. Bye. Have a great time. All right, anyway, let's keep going.
A normal position for governments up until very recently. And because not least, like the geopolitical implications are just so blindingly obvious.
Yes.
Like if your country has a shrinking population, you don't have enough young men to form an army. Obviously, you're incredibly vulnerable. I mean, this just seems sort of.
Oh,
like
I remember this.
stuff.
There was a comment on
And
this.
Yeah, what was the comment?
Oh, the comment was, well, look at somebody said, well, look, yeah, she's right. Look at what happened with the Ukraine. And then another person was like, well, I think it was Russia that was the way that they put it was,
Russia killing Ukrainians was the problem?
No, if you solved Russia's, militarism. And I'm like, yes, but how are you going to do that? Like, if you have an aggressive state, what are you going to do? Like, it's the same thing that they have with criminals. It's like, well, women wouldn't have to be afraid of men if you just got, criminal men just chose. And it's like, but criminal men are not going to choose that.
Yeah.
They're not, like, maybe at some point you could intervene in the process of creating a criminal man after you identify maybe genetic factors related to impulse control and being abused. Like you might be able to develop therapies to intervene at some point, but they're still going to make the choices that they make, okay? And we have no control over that. It's like NATO doesn't have any control over Russia's decisions.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Well, maybe Russia. I mean, I don't know because we don't know what. Go ahead.
Let's not get into the weeds on it. I'm just using it as an example of. There are states that are aggressive, and the states that are not aggressive have no control over the aggressive states except having an army.
Yeah.
Okay? And
so
we have no control over criminals except having a justice system and police.
Right.
It's unless you want to go in and stop single women from having children, that would be a viable option.
What I was going to add to that is I don't know anything about Russia's policy or how the government's run. That doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that maybe the men in some countries have a good incentives to want to, potentially fight and die for that country. I mean, the United States used to have that, right? When it was necessary, there were men, and there still are men who have like there's a patriotic spirit in them, but there are the incentives for them to do the right thing or good things are diminishing, and incentives for women to behave badly are growing. And so whatever kind of behavior you reward, you will get. And so when if our population is dwindling, then that's the reward we're going to get. And you have to ask, why is that happening? Who is being incentivized to not have families, to not start families, or where's this coming from? And I mean, this is, again, it's going to point you in the same direction. You're going to be like, well, wait a minute, who decides when they get pregnant? It's women. Like this, there is no way around that. But they can't talk about it. I mean, Louise Perry she is not being dishonest when she says a country without an army is vulnerable, right? And we can't have an army of women. It just wouldn't work. So the biological truth of it is that if we want a country that can defend itself, at least there has to be men, and they have to be good men who want to do that. Because otherwise you're going to end up with a situation now where, you know, there's like all these like foreign wars that Americans don't want to be in, and at the same time we have like a global propaganda campaign that is anti-male, right? And then we're also asking those men to fight in those wars, and they're like, why? Like, I have nothing. I can't get a good job. I can't find a woman worth anything. You're taking away my entertainment is crap. My video games suck. Like, my education sucks. My job sucks. Everything costs too much. No one considers my point of view worthwhile, and yet you want me to go to the Middle East, or you want me to go to Eastern Europe and fight in your wars? So of course they're not going to do it, and they shouldn't. And now they're like, well, why did that happen? You know, we only disincentivize any reason for men to do anything for their country. And so now you're like, well, and again, these people aren't putting that together. I don't think they're not seeing, you know, like how, like,
Yeah, they're
just
not connecting the dots.
no,
Like,
they're not connecting the dots on that.
well, they want to have a predominant ideology that shames men for their participation in the culture as oppressive, but at the same time compels men to sacrifice for the very culture that they're shamed for having created. And it's okay, you can continue to try to fit that much fuck into young men's brains, or you could stop. You know, like, and the thing is that what's really happening is young men are just shutting down. And of course they're shutting down. When you abuse people, they shut down.
Yeah.
The end. All right.
I mean, you're lucky that that's all they're doing. Okay, let's listen more.
Yes, I mean, I love Miriam, but yeah, she stands up and talks about natalism, and people on the left lose their minds.
Well, why is that, Louise? Why is because natalism is like a clever word that like intellectual use, but like the idea that people in a country ought to replenish the population by having children.
Yeah, the families are good, the babies are good.
Yeah, like why is this coded? Like we have this, by the way, this is another thing that pisses me off, which is like,
I'm gonna pause it there for a second. I don't even think that like it's a duty that people have. I mean, I think it is to some degree a duty to get married and have kids, but I think that it's just like it's already in us to do that. Like we pair bond, we reproduce. That's what we do. So it's not that our natural instincts are being like overridden by a demand to reproduce. It's that our natural instincts are actually being suppressed by something that's telling us not to do it. Like they're telling women, don't have kids, you know, focus on career, don't be a slave to a man, etc. You see this everywhere. Even supposed conservative women are like, you know, freaking out about this Handmaid's Tale narrative that like because our population is shrinking, you know, the government's going to start enslaving women and turning them into surrogates or something. And it's like, no, if you just had kids, you'd be fine. I think most men want that, and most women want that. So why are people being told
Get rid of the obstacles.
that they shouldn't? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We all we got to do, we can just eliminate the obstacles, and we can provide like some perks, like tax breaks to people who have kids, which is how it's always been done. It's not even like a new thing.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll let them finish their thought, and then I want to get back into the time codes we were sent.
All right.
We have this term now, something is coded as right-wing, which basically means it's not right-wing, it's just a bunch of dickheads in the media think that you shouldn't talk about this issue.
It gives right-wing vibes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, like, so why is this coded as right-wing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really fascinating question. Like, why would the most affluent people and comfortable people who have ever lived in the history of the world decide that actually having babies is bad and is onerous and is, I mean, because you're here.
Okay, so she sort of deflected the question. I'm not sure if she actually answers it, because I'm pretty sure that she just goes into, we have an affluent culture, just doesn't want to have children.
Something like that. Yeah, she doesn't.
Well, maybe because
she avoids the question, I think.
Because the affluence comes from a particular attitude of self-interest. You know, get your bag and try to get his bag too. You know, keep your bag, get his bag kind of thing. But to answer their question, so why is natalism seen as far right? Because family is seen as conservative, astoundingly. I mean, at this point, you would have to say, wait. So having families now is seen as a political position. And I think that it's because in many ways, both the left and the right are now more about masculine and feminine in some ways. Like the left is really about the party of the single women. So it's not really masculine and feminine, but it's a particular kind of feminine that's sort of like I don't know, like a Petra Pan kind of feminism, a feminine that doesn't want to grow up. Doesn't want to be of service to anything. Exchanges nurturing for virtue signaling over monolithic infant classes, that kind of thing. So you got this kind of, I would say even infantile feminine that has grasped the political reins. And because of that, because you now have a political party that is deeply invested in manufacturing a particular kind of outlook, and literally that outlook is the outlook of single women. Like, so the outlook of, I'm in it for myself, I'm going to keep my bag and get his bag, I'm not interested, I'm interested only in me time, Sex in the City, that kind of thing. That kind of very hedonistic, achievement focused lifestyle, without a sense of responsibility to community, without a sense of responsibility to family, replacing those kinds of urges, which I think that women do have a sense of responsibility to community. I mean, a lot of the surge in women in STEM was because of government initiatives to frame going into maths and sciences as a part of patriotism, of serving the country. And then women responded to that. They responded a hell of a lot better to that than whatever feminism constructed around the victim narrative around STEM. So, I mean, there is that quality of, you know, women do want to serve the greater community, but the Democratic Party creates this kind of intersectionalism which allows women to do that without really impacting their personal life or their personal pursuit of self-interest, so that they can virtue signal about the monolithic infant classes without having to change, you know, shitty diapers, you know, without actually having to go and help poor people overcome issues, or go and dig a well, without actually having to do anything personal in order to feel like a virtuous savior and someone who's serving the community, you know. So it's again, it's this kind of what has happened in essence is this: we now have a political party, which is in many ways the only political party, which is constructed and serves a particular form of feminine consciousness, which is very, very juvenile very infantile, very self-focused, and isn't interested in serving anything but themselves, outside of the most vacuous and self-interested virtue signaling. And that's a lot, like I'm sure that that's gonna hit the misogyny filter, because I'm spouting a lot of misogyny there or whatever. But it's the honest to God truth is that why would we assume that women grow up by virtue of being women? Why would we assume that?
Right.
Why would we assume that if we construct a society around indulging women's most base instincts, which, you can have sex whenever you want. You don't have to worry about getting pregnant. If you get pregnant, you can have an abortion. And I'm not exactly against birth control or abortion, but, and if you just want to, for whatever impulse you want to have a child, then we'll pay for that too. Like at no point are women expected to endure the consequences of their own choices. They aren't even when they're criminals to the same degree men are. So we constantly give women less accountability than men. We constantly construct this kind of fantasy world in which women's choices don't matter, and they don't have an effect, a knock-on effect on society, on community, on their own children, on men. We just pretend that doesn't exist, and it's constructing basically a fantasy land for women. And then we have a political position, Democrats, the left, that is all about continuing the fantasy land for the psychology. And so I would say that the reason why having family has become right wing is because the left is invested in keeping women single.
Yeah. Well, although when the left says something is coded right or is right wing, what they're really saying is it is evil because it is not what we believe. It's so they're trying to. That's why when people say, "Well, how is that right?" They're just putting everything they don't like in one box, calling it right wing, and then saying that you're evil for supporting.
Well, why wouldn't they like family? Well, that's why.
Because no, you're right. I'm just adding to what you said. I think there's a base like reason, but then there's like the reason behind that. And ultimately, single motherhood is essentially a state-sponsored family unit. That's because the state is involved, and this is another aspect of it not being right-wing. It is in fact a product of statism, which is leftism. And so there you go. That's what single motherhood is, and that's what they want to perpetuate. And that's why single moms always vote Democrat, because the Democrat Party says, look, we are basically your husband and the father of your kids. And if you want to keep getting like your house paid for and your food and all that, you got to vote for us. And that's what it is. It's like people talk about how we're like getting to the point where harems are being formed. There already is one. It is all of these single moms and the state. That's what it is. So anyway, I got a Super Chow and I got a Super Chow, so we should read that and a super chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Gross. So Mr. Stupid gives us $5 and says, I'm confused. At times, Karen is ranting over the fact there's 8 frickin' billion people stumbling over each other. At other times, Allison loses her cool over women's material desires that require 4 planets worth of resources. Now you're most concerned about the decline in birth rates at a global scale. Didn't the guys at WIC have a point when they said if the Earth's population is reproducing at replacement level, why won't immigration solve the numbers problems in the first world? Okay, let me just summarize. First of all, me and Karen are different people. Clara, like me and Brian are different people. We have different opinions about things. I cannot answer to what she said about 8 billion people in the world because first of all, I don't remember her saying it. And second of all, I don't know what she was getting at. So, because I'm not her, I don't have access to her thinking. Now, I can answer to my statements. I have lost my cool over women's material desires that would require 4 planets worth of resources. You don't need 4 planets worth of resources to have children. Okay?
You said it was
that.
I think you just said it was 2 Earths, though.
2 Earths, yeah.
2 Earths.
Yeah, to be clear. Yeah, this is, and also women's material desires generally. So if men earned enough to get married, since basically what's happening is men need to earn twice as much on average to get married, then we would need that much more resources to fulfill the material goods that would purchase. Of course, there'd probably be a lot of inflation, but so it wouldn't be quite. But that's where that comes from. But that's not about having children at all. In fact, the women who seem to want this may never have children. They're not asking for this to have children, right? Because you don't need all this to have children. They're probably asking for it because they don't want to feel like they're losing out, and they want to compete successfully with the women who are married or their friends their friends' expectations and that kind of thing. So a lot of this is, I think, female competition. Didn't the guys at WIC have a point when they said that the Earth's population is reproducing, but it's not reproducing at replacement level?
They said that, but they're wrong. It's like in most countries, it is below replacement level, and some countries in Africa, it is like slightly above, but it's starting to level out.
Decline.
Yeah, it's starting to plateau, as it were. And we're also, bear in mind that we're talking about like a time in history where there's a large number of old people who will be dying soon. So these numbers look good, maybe, but they won't be for very long. And also, 8 billion people in the context of the entire planet, it really isn't that many. I don't think that we're overpopulated. I don't think we're close to it.
Okay, so just to conclude with, I think I have been explaining what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not at a replacement level. If we import people, they won't be at replacement level. So let's say we import half the children of Africa. Okay, the people who are left will first of all, they will be reducing in the amount of children that they have, because this is a worldwide phenomenon. But also, you are going to be reducing their population by half and then taking the product of that reduced population, because as they come into our culture, they stop breeding, they stop having children. So let's say you have a population of Africa, 10 people, right? 10 couples having children. And you take the children, like half the children of those 10 couples. Then in the next generation, you have 5 couples having children in Africa, right? How is that sustainable? If you are taking the population that's having children, bringing them into the countries that are not having children, they become naturalized and stop having children. Like basically what you're saying is Africa has to have a replacement rate for Africa plus a replacement rate for the rest of the world. And they are going down. At some point, that's not going to be tenable. We have to solve this problem. Okay, so that's the explanation for all of this.
And the thing about like multiple Earths is has more to do with women's materialism,
yes,
rather than like our ability to sustain that. Because maybe if women stopped asking for so much shit, then we'd probably be better off. But this is another thing. It's like the people who are concerned about climate would rather that we just kill more human beings than have women buy less crap. You know? I mean, that would like I swear to God, it would fix the problem.
And again, it's the issue is not that we're at replacement level. Fine, replacement level is a good thing to aim for because we're going well below it.
Yes,
okay,
we are.
I wanted to go to the next thing I wanted to do was to go to, just give me a second. We're having less. Okay, so 1819.
Right here. Why are people having less sex?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I got a super chat. I'm just gonna read it really quick while we got this. Kind of sounds like what Muhammad Ali said about Vietnam. When I want equality, you're my oppressor. When I want to practice my faith, you're my oppressor. For $5 Canadian. Thank you, Albert. Okay, I'm gonna go into the sources now, and let's play.
So actually, Louise, is that we seem to be talking about sex more than ever. Pornography is literally the click of a button away, the tap of a screen away. Dating apps, you can go on there and you can get potentially whatever it is that you like, and you to a very fine degree. But we're having less sex than ever before.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The sex recession.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my theory, although I don't really have any proof for it, it's just vibes, is that it's that those things might be linked. It might be that when you have this sort of copious availability of sexual stimuli, you don't feel the need to go out and actually do the hard work of building a relationship with a real person, that maybe sex has less mystique. I mean, I think that.
Do you want me to?
Different opinion. Let's see, where are we at?
About halfway through that clip, there's like a 40 seconds left.
All right. So
Well, listen. You want to listen to the rest of it? Or
let's have her full say. I just wanted to pause for the to make sure that we don't get hit with the copyright.
That's cool.
That's definitely. I think it's definitely the case that when men are not allowed to have sex before marriage, and when they can only get married when they have done various adult things, like you've got a job, you've got a house, you earn X amount, whatever, they are going to be extremely motivated to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if men can get sex just by being good looking or even not, like why that motivation is removed. So I think there's definitely, I think sexual frustration, I think good societies know how to harness sexual frustration to productive ends.
All right. I'm going to come at this from a completely different angle. Instead of, again, notice how this has been reframed in terms of men's will, shall we say. Instead of, like, it's the same thing with the elephant that I spoke about earlier, how we seem to have this big issue with recognizing the selective pressure that women exert on men. And now suddenly we're talking about this sexlessness as if men chose it.
Just be hot, bro.
Just be hot, bro. Yeah. I don't think that's what's happening. First of all, again, it is, I think women are in many cases the ones who are sort of choosing whether or not sex happens.
Yes.
Sometimes even without the man's consent. Okay. So this is what I would want to point out. The other thing is that if there's a situation where men are not going out, like they're preferring porn or sex bots or whatever to going out and trying to get in a relationship with a woman, if that's happening, perhaps it's not happening because it's easier, which incidentally, why should it be so hard for men to get a relationship with a woman? Like at the core of this is this idea that men need to work for it. And of course, also that in the process of compelling men to work for it, that they get on a hamster wheel and the hamster wheel runs society. In other words, so to have, I don't think that that's actually what motivates men to work. I think it's children.
Yes.
Family and children. And what's happening now is more and more that doesn't seem to be on the table for women. So when you talk about, oh, we're not having sex, I think part of it is that many men would rather forego all of the antics or all of the effort it takes to date women. They'd rather forgo it if they don't think that, for one, family and children are going to be there at the end of the day. So they don't think that they're actually dating now appears to be an endless treadmill with no goal. Like it's just, you give women money, you maybe get sex. It is like going to a whorehouse, except you're also playing the lottery at the same time. It's like, put your money down. Maybe you'll get to go sleep with I don't know, one of the prostitutes.
Yeah.
It's like a slot machine. Pull the lever. Maybe you'll get a key to one of the rooms, that kind of thing. It's like it's prostitution, except prostitution with gambling attached. Right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of guys are probably not going into that or not interested in that because, again, it does not appear to be that there's family formation and children at the end of that. So what's the point? Like a lot of men, that's what motivates them. They want to date because they want to have a family, and in a lot of the stuff that I see coming out, popular stuff for women, is that dating has nothing to do with forming a relationship. It has to do with getting free meals. It has to do with having sex with no strings attached. It has to do with getting like entertainment, feeling good about yourself. It has nothing to do with eventually finding a partner. And then the other thing, again, why should men have to get on this treadmill? if we're looking at a postnatal society, a society with no children, where women are not expected to have children, they have no responsibility to family, then what is it that they want from men? Well, presumably at this point it's like nothing, right? But what about companionship? Like if you have all these expectations on men, but no children at the end of the day, no family formation at the end of the day, then what these women are presenting is this idea that they're extremely expensive whores with no determined outcome, basically.
Yeah.
Like that, it's just like, you play the slots, maybe you'll get a salute. All right, like that's basically it. And then the other thing is that more and more, women don't present the idea that men can be loved, that women can love men. And that's, I'm sure, turning off a lot of men. Because we don't even have to look at the sexlessness, because that's probably irrelevant. Let's look at the number of men who are even willing to start attempt at dating is going down leaps and bounds. And I would honestly argue that, one, it doesn't look like there's family on the table. Like at the end of this dating treadmill, are you going to get kids and family? Probably not. And two, are you even going to get companionship at the end of the day? Like, even if you're going to be one of those eternal honeymooners, like, are you going to get a woman that you think can desire you socially, as a friend, sexually, as a lover? Are you even going to get a companion? Because from what I've been seeing, women don't give the impression that they will ever love men. There's a lot of women out there, the loudest voices get the very strong impression that women are incapable of loving men. Or alternatively, if you want to frame it in a way that won't be flagged as misogynist, that women or men are completely incapable of becoming lovable to women.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing the numbers in men who are willing to interact with women at all go down and down and down. And we don't have to worry about the sex, because let's face it, genital handshakes do not make a civilization.
Yeah.
Treating sex as entertainment does not create a future for the human race. Right? So there you go. Why are men not engaging? Because they don't see families at the end of the road? You know,
right.
Why would they engage in all of this dating behavior, all of this courtship behavior, which incidentally arose because it's a huge part of human beings pair bonding and forming families? Why would they do this when family's not on the table? And why would they do this even if family is not on the table? Why would they do this if companionship isn't even on the table? Like, women need to figure this shit out. They need to learn to appreciate men as companions, right? They need to, and the reason why I say they need to learn this is because I'm pretty sure, from my experience of all of this, of what I'm seeing, that the reason why they don't appreciate men as companions is because their girlfriends whisper in their ears, "Oh, he's not good enough for you. He's not doing enough for you. You could get so much better." And instead of just saying, "This is mine. This is the guy that I'm going to share my lives with, my sorrows and hopes. This is the man that I'm going to turn to for comfort and hopefully be able to comfort him. This is my partner." Instead, they play endless games of compare and contrast with their girlfriends, which destabilizes and destroys their relationships. And then they do TikTok challenges and all of this other crap. And in the back of their mind, they're always like, well, what if he's getting something more out of this than me? I got to make sure I get my bag. You know, and all of this noise makes it impossible for women to clear their minds and simply enjoy the fact that another human being has chosen to be with them. And there's nothing more valuable in the world than that.
All right.
Okay.
What's the next section we should jump
clip.
to? Well, I mean, that was the end of that section. Was there something that Great Indoors wanted us to look at specifically?
Well, he gave a bunch of time codes, and I'm looking through them to find the ones that are really good. Let's go back to 1706, the danger of a less peaceful society with a surplus of single men, because that's something I also want to deal with. Like, there's a lot. Like, it is a over hour video, so there is a lot in it.
Yeah.
And I know there's that I want to, before I get into the overarching stuff, which is society that's wealthy equals a society that has fewer children. I just wanted to deal with all of the things that piss me off.
Yeah, sure.
That way. Okay.
All right, let's go.
Where you can say that at an individual level, that might be fine, and that for some people that might be fine, but having it as the norm is bad.
Well,
I
right,
think this is one of
coming
those
back to our
places.
conversation about children growing up without fathers.
Precisely.
If there's 100 children with one father, it's probably going to struggle to give them
So that's certainly true. Yeah, that's certainly true. And I think also it's probably bad for societies to have lots of men without mates,
Yes.
Yeah.
because we do know that fatherhood kind of tames men in terms of men commit less crime, and that just societies with lots of sexually frustrated men are more less peaceful societies. And obviously I know you can go from that to be like, oh well, in that case we need to be apportioning women to all of the incels, and there's a
Oh shit!
there's like
I've
a
been
very
talking.
there's a very
I said sexually frustrated men are necessary for the functioning of society, but don't have too many of them. It's destructive. Well, I guess you could say they're like gasoline, like the exploding the gasoline inside an engine is good, but exploding it outside is bad. But the thing is that men are not destructive because they're sexually frustrated. Right? That's not how it works. Destructive men are a very specific subcategory, and we really shouldn't even refer to them as men, because women are destructive women are basically the same. Criminal people are a very specific subcategory. All right? That of people who have genetic abnormalities that lead to poor impulse control combined with extremely destructive upbringings. So to say, oh, it's sexual frustration that makes men dangerous, that is nonsense. And in fact, it feels like it's taking off this whole kind of genetic sin of rape. You know what I mean? Like it's, oh, men are rapey. Oh, bullshit. I wanted to say that. And also societies with more men are generally more peaceful. Apparently,
as long as you're not shitting on them the whole time.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
like,
not shitting on them the whole time.
And you're like treating them like human beings and
Recognizing their
educating
contributions.
Yeah, exactly. Like encouraging them to be, good men and productive and stuff. But like we're doing the opposite of that. And we're, basically we're putting men in a spot where they're lonely. They can't have friend groups because that gets broken up. They can't find mates. There's no incentive for them to excel at anything. And now we're like, oh my God, what happens if there's too many of them? Well, probably do something about that. Like, but you can't go and, start like clutching your pearls after all of this damage has been done. Frankly, you should be surprised that it's not a lot worse. That men are just kind of, checking out.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have. First of all, again, it's only going to be a minority of people who engage in any kind of criminal violence, unless you start creating a narrative in which it's justified. Like, I mean, soldiers will do this, but they believe that they're upholding the principles of their culture. So, you can create narratives that justify violence, but that's not really what's going on here. She's basically just saying, frustrated male equal danger. Bullshit. All right, let's go to the next annoyance.
Want to play the rest of this, or is there another time code?
Let's go to 1553. It's just a little bit before. I know we're going backwards, but it's because I wanted to get into why natalism is seen as right wing, which it's because the Democratic Party is now the party of single women, and they cultivate that particular mentality, which means that you can't have family. Like a woman with a family is not a single woman. Therefore, family must be condemned. All right, let's go.
Right.
erosion of monogamy, I'm gonna guess this isn't good for women.
No, I don't think so. I mean, there would be some. So someone like Diana Fleischman, who you've had on the pod, haven't you? She's a friend of mine. She's poly. I'm sure she's very open about this, and she would say that there's a threshold in terms of how attractive a man is, where women are willing to tolerate not being the only woman. Like if he's so attractive and the condition of being with him is that you're part of a harem, there's a point where women will be like, okay.
Some women,
Some will be more averse than others, but and I guess she'd say, well, it's up to them. If the women are willing to tolerate not being the only one. It's obviously different if they're being lied to, but if he's being open about what's going on, then I suppose you could say they're adults, they can make the decision. I think.
Yeah, you gotta pause for the banana. That's okay.
I know. Well, I mean, this is actually happening. There are guys that are so high status that women are willing to share him, and they're okay with it. And I mean, they don't even have to really be like she's saying, as long as he's being honest. But I think that even if the conversation has never taken place, where he's just he's never committed to anybody or anything, and he's just banging whoever, the women will. I think what often happens is they join a harem, and what they do is they try to become the number one woman. So there's still some intersexual competition between the women this guy is with.
And then they complain about his behavior as if it references all.
Yeah, of course. And they'll say, well, this is what all men are like. But, to go to the HOMAD thing, she's only looking at that guy, and all the other men don't exist as men.
This is, I think, again, something that you could look at in terms of women's competition with each other. And also social proof, because a man who has lots of women has a lot of social proof. So because of that, he becomes more attractive. But again, what I was talking about was understanding and appreciating companionship, right? Because this is a purely sexual thing. The guys who have a woman who's okay with this is just purely interested in the sexuality of the guy.
That's it.
He is there's nothing else there. Or alternatively, she's part of more conservative culture, and maybe the emphasis is on her relationship with the other wives, right? That could work too. But for the most part, it is a situation where the value of men's companionship is quite low. So it becomes about, does he have social proof from other women?
Yeah.
Can I engage in catty one-upmanship with other women? Because that could be the attraction too.
Oh yeah.
To indulge your competition with other women over this one guy who's very valuable and made even more valuable by all that competition that you get to indulge in. And what dies along the way is this idea of just simply having a companion. And because that's not what you're getting from this. So, there's that, and that is something that women, I think, have to deal with themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of some of the issue with being able to have a companion or pursue companionship is you have to sort of be comfortable with yourself. I know a lot of people go in about all the codependence and all this stuff and people who can't survive without a relationship. Honestly, the people who have the worst relationship with themselves tend to be unable to keep a relationship with someone else. I'll just lay it out there. They talk a big talk about codependence, but codependent people probably are more comfortable with themselves than a single woman who's talking about how I don't need no man, but wants men to hear that her say that,
Yeah.
Constantly can't exist without thumbing her nose at the very men she says she don't need. Well, you seem to need them for something, for some aspect of your psychological health. Otherwise, you'd just be trucking along your own way and not talking about it publicly, not making TikTok Like I'm just thinking about that one TikTok video where the woman is in her house and she's just doing things and she's got the I don't know, you have to compete with me being alone. You men, you don't compete with other men. You just compete with me being all by myself, just with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Like, you obviously need something from men if you're even making this video to make men feel bad that you're not choosing them. And just as a completely shallow aside, what is with this freaking vocal fry? Like, I mean, it's gone from just emphasizing things to just being like
a personality. It's your whole personality.
It's your whole personality, and you're so done with the world, right?
Yeah.
I'm so
My
done.
life is a nightmare. I can just say it normal. My life is a nightmare. Okay. I can't take it.
Okay, let's. I think there's a few more seconds in this one, so let's finish.
All right, we'll play the rest of this.
I think, though, that I think it's totally possible, and in fact there are loads of cases where this is the case, where you can say that at an individual level that might be fine, and that for some people that might be fine, but having it as the norm is bad.
Well, right, coming back to our conversation about children growing up without fathers.
Precisely.
If there's 100 children with one father, it's probably going to struggle to give them
So that's certainly true. Yeah, that's certainly true. And
that happens in low-income urban areas all the time. A lot of the single moms, and they're single moms, so this benefits the state too, but they usually are all sleeping with like a small subset of men who are in the same community, and those men are not necessarily high status in that they're like CEOs, but they might be gang leaders or drug dealers or whatever, in like, or part of organized crime groups in that area. I know, I lived in Humboldt Park, Chicago, and it's all over the city, the south side, the west side, whatever. And these women will know they're sharing the same dude, right? In a lot of cases, and they're okay with it. Sometimes it becomes violent between those women. There's lots of like, street fights with women, black women and Latina women in these, like, in the projects, and they're fighting over a man, and the man's not even there, and their kids are involved in everything. And it's like, I mean, we can talk about like why that man should be taking responsibility or something, but it's kind of stupid, because ultimately it's like, even if he said, I will do my best, and he's got 100 kids, it's an unworkable situation. So you got to ask, why, ladies, are you all knowingly getting pregnant with this same dude? Well, first of all, because the government's going to pay for it anyway. So you're like, well, why not? I knew women who had like 4 kids, 5 kids, and they would have them from different fathers, specifically because they would get more money either from child support or from the state. And on top of that, they got the biggest tax returns somehow. So we're incentivizing this, and it's what we're going to get.
Well, what I was going to say is, how are you going to get enough money to cover 100 kids from one man?
Yeah. And then the only person we're trying to hold accountable is the man. It's like, what are you going to do about that guy? Like, you can't stop the one dude, the pimp, that's getting like, 20 women pregnant all the time. You can't stop him, but you can probably stop them from making these stupid decisions. Yeah.
By not paying them to do it. Like, but yeah, it's like, and like, I remember we talked about this when I think it was Musk retweeted the one of the Republican nominees. He was talking about how he would make it so that if you find the father, that he was 100% responsible for the for child support with no opt out.
Yeah.
That's like, well, but in many cases, how are you going to get that guy to support his 100 kids? Like, how?
I mean, if the dude is probably already a criminal, do you really think that, like, this is what I'm saying? It's almost like it's a virtue signal to say that. Because what you're doing, see, this is what they're doing. When these politicians do that, and yeah, doesn't matter what the party is, they're pandering to women still. Either they're pandering to women by promising them free shit, or they're pandering to women by promising to make the men pay. But they're pandering to women at the end of the day. And that's what has to stop. I mean, look, the system that we are now using to incentivize bad behavior in single motherhood is unsustainable objectively. And so either women are going to be told they have to change their ways, they have to reconsider their habits, they have to change something about their life, or the system is going to collapse and there's just not going to be any money. And the men, they're just going to be doing their own thing, or they're just going to stop fucking around with these women, and that's going to be it. So it doesn't matter how we get there or who feels blamed. That doesn't matter, because the devil will have his due eventually, no matter what. So you might as well try to do something now.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it's ridiculous, because if women all choose the same guy, they're just not going to be able to make him accountable.
Yeah.
Let's go to, because this is relevant to let's go to
How much longer are we going, by the way?
Yeah, because of your voice.
Well, that, and I got to do a patron show too.
What are we at? Go to 10:55. 10:55.
All right, here we go.
That might be fine, and that for some kids are now born outside of wedlock. I think we crossed that threshold a couple of years ago. And in some groups, it's even higher.
Do you think there will be some kind of snap back against it, or is it single parenthood all the way down?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose it might be that we're just reverting to the human mating norm is polygynous.
No.
Right? Where you have...
Just explain that.
No, it is not.
Is that some sex at dawn shit?
Okay, you get rid of... Yeah, it's sex at dawn shit. You get rid of the welfare state, and you go back to a system in which men are cooperating to gain the resources in order to support children, and you will see how quickly we go back to monogamous marriages without the one guy fathering 100 children. You'll see how quickly we go back, and it will be rapid.
I mean, okay, let's hear the rest of
The people?
Where you have one male having multiple female partners and some portion of men not having any, right? The monogamous system that prevails until recently in the West is quite unusual. I think it's 20% of societies have a monogamous system.
Yeah, most of the societies that have polygamy are mostly most of the relationships in those societies are monogamous. And also the cultures that have strict monogamy are the most successful.
Yeah.
The end. So,
well, peasants had lots of kids.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, let's, do we get to, okay, so just a few more seconds of that.
Okay.
We have about 3 or 4 time codes left, so.
All right.
If you need to rest your voice, then just, I'll take it. I'll take it away. But we're pretty close.
Let's play the rest of this.
Of course, include some of the most successful civilizations to have ever existed, including Christendom and Roman Empire.
Christendom is
but it's still
not
kind of
polygynous.
No, I think she's referring to monogamous. Oh, I think so.
Yeah,
go back a little bit.
Romans very monogamous. Yeah, go back a little bit.
Yeah, she was referring to monogamy, but let's leave it.
Some portion of men not having any, right? The monogamous system that prevails until recently in the West is quite unusual. I think it's 20% of societies have a monogamous system, which does of course include some of the most successful civilizations to have ever existed, including Christendom and Roman Empire.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we're gonna we're gonna move to a different time code. We are not polygamous, as a polygynous species. If we were, there would be certain features, anatomical features, that would be quite different. For example, men and women's canine teeth there's almost no sexual dimorphism between men and women's canine teeth. If we were polygamous maters, men's canine teeth would probably be about an inch long. If we judge based on like what the difference between male and female chimps. So could you imagine that? Right there. Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
I wish I had big ass canines. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we'd have huge, like men would have huge ass canines. They would also have significantly different skulls. Like if you compare the skulls of chimpanzees versus male versus female, hell, you compare the skulls of their promiscuous maters. You compare the skulls of gorillas, male versus female. So men would essentially look like orcs. They would probably be about 2 to 3 feet taller than women, a couple 100 pounds heavier. They would have gigantic canines. Their faces would slope out like this, and they'd have huge brows and sagittal cresses in order to support a bite force. That's not what human men look like. I mean, maybe it would be cool if they did, but it's not what they look like.
Sounds like a subgenre of hentai to me, though.
Yeah, well, but like there's real significant anatomical differences when you're dealing with a polygamous species, and also pairing with their gigantic orc-like appearance, they would have balls the size of grapes and a penis the size of a thimble. So, okay. Yeah, that's not as fun?
No.
Okay, so no, human men are not, like, they don't reflect. The basic anatomy of humans does not reflect the anatomy that you would expect of a polygynous species, like an inherently polygynous species. Not one that's flexible enough to include polygyny sometimes, because we're flexible. Our mating system is basically monogamous, but we have some flexibility, so we can include some polygyny and some polyandry, and then also some polygamy, period, like multiple people having relationships. This doesn't make us a polygynous species. There would be biological markers if we were. And we're not. We're just not. We're probably we're much closer to a monogamous model. And maybe a little bit of promiscuity. But honestly, compared to other mammals that are social pair bonders like beavers, there's a low level of non-paternity. Like humans actually have a very high level of a correspondence between social paternity, which is the father that's raising the children, and genetic paternity, which is the father that fathered the children. Other mammals, including other bird species, that's not as high as it is in humans. In humans, it's probably about 95%. The social father is the biological father. Now, having said that 5% is abhorrent. Like every single woman who engages in paternity fraud is basically a rapist, as far as I'm concerned. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's justified. I'm just saying it's not very high compared to animals, where with beavers, only 30% of the genetic fathers are the social fathers are also genetic fathers. With supposedly pair bonding birds, like the rate of genetic monogamy can sometimes be as only about like 70%, 50-70%. Like humans are very monogamous. It's just the way we are. That doesn't mean, again, that people don't cheat. It doesn't mean that you can't have polygyny. It doesn't mean that you can't have polyandry. It doesn't mean that there aren't failures. There aren't women who cuckold men. But the idea that cuckolding is wrong would only come about in a species with our high level of genetic monogamy. I'll be honest. Like, just like the idea that rape being wrong would only come about in a species that very much values sexual consent. right? So there you go. That's my answer to
Okay.
this. We should probably go to the next time code. I will tell you
Yeah.
what it is. 5:33.
Okay, so we're going over here.
Yeah. It's the shaming of single mothers versus the shaming of deadbeat dads, quote unquote deadbeat dads. Why don't we call single women
Yeah.
mothers like deadbeat moms?
It's yeah, I mean it's not quite right. It's more like women who deny fathers access to their kids, I guess, or make poor choices in the men that they choose to breed with.
Well, you were
It's one of
talking
those.
about these women must know that when they become woman number 27,
In
this
that,
guy's not-
yeah, in
this
those
guy is
instances,
not- is not
Right.
going to live up to any of his responsibilities, so-called responsibilities.
yeah,
They must
yeah.
know that.
I guess I'm trying to find a term that fits because there's a number of reasons. One is that, one is, maybe they're not getting pregnant with like the guy that the high status guy in the area, but maybe it's for other reasons, like they just figure that their choices don't matter, because I think there is like this idea that they have no control over their life, and that they're just kind of like, oh, I got pregnant, oh well, even though we have all this birth control and all these options, but they choose to like keep the baby anyway, and they push the men out of their life, purposefully, or they reproduce with a guy that's unfit to be a dad because he's a criminal, he ends up in jail, he ends up with lots of other women. So it's almost like a deadbeat mom is not quite the right way to put it, but it's something else, like unfit mother, basically. Or remember we used to have a line in the 90s when teenage girls would get pregnant. We used to have like a way of shaming them, called it babies having babies.
Unwed mothers.
Unwed mothers, yeah.
That's we go back to that. Unwed mothers, or mothers who have chosen not to have fathers in their children's lives, because it's honestly like this
Mothers who deny fathers, basically, or
for mothers who deny
their children
fathers.
fathers.
Fatherless child havers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But but here's the thing, like we used to hold women accountable. Okay.
We used to have a stigma around that, for sure.
We used to have a stigma around that. And then suddenly we get away with get rid of the stigma, but the stigma on men is still there. The stigma on men is definitely still there. We still stigmatize.
We give mothers like Mother's Day and Father's Day.
We stigmatize. We just give men, instead of stigmatizing single women, we just give them Father's Day. But we still stigmatize men. Of course, the argument here is going to be that we don't, but we do.
Yeah, obviously.
And so what has happened? This has increased. The number of women who are single moms has increased. Maybe it is not because of the choices of men.
Well, I was gonna say, like, we've been using the term deadbeat dad for decades, and the deadbeat dad phenomena continues. It's almost like I said before, those guys, they don't care what you think of them. So maybe they were probably not a good choice for a dad, but they were chosen for the sex. He was willing, she was willing, she knew what she was getting into. We don't have anything to say. Like it comes down to women are the gatekeepers of sex, and they have to be complicit if a baby is going to happen, right? And they are choosing the kind of men, the caliber of men to reproduce with, and those are the men that get elevated because those are the men who are sexually successful. So other men who are not sexually successful might even look at those men and say, oh, so that's what I got to do to get laid. And so you almost like, I mean, not that most men would do that, because I'm sure that only a few would, but you're creating the standard, like what women choose in terms of who they want to reproduce with, who they want to lay down with. That creates the standard that other men will look at. And they'll be like, well, I want to be like that.
So essentially what welfare has done is it's freed women to select men based on other factors than responsibility, discipline, providership, etc. And the other factors that they choose are very different from that. But that's the thing. The women are the ones choosing this. They are the ones driving this. And government is the one facilitating this choice. Okay, let's listen to what she has to say.
All right, I got a Rumble rant. I got to read it really quick so I don't forget. NovaFan21 gives us $2 and says, notice how society struggles labeling women even when women do harm while they casually insult men for any reason. It's as if the very idea of holding women accountable is seen as slavery. Yeah, well, and obviously, like, activists will not put up with it. But it's true. It's like they can't even find the words to make the case. And this is like an issue of the language. Okay, so you want to play the rest of this soundbite?
Yeah, let's play it.
People would probably be forced to reckon with reality a lot more in, I don't know, something like single motherhood. You know, it's absolutely true, you know, the feminist critique of the shaming of single mothers, that the shaming of single mothers causes a lot of harm to women and their children. It's also the case that single motherhood is itself catastrophic, particularly.
It's way more harmful, actually. Like, shaming women, it probably hurts their feelings, but women who are single moms are bringing, like, damaged kids into the world who then grow up and they become single mothers or they become criminals, and that spreads. It's way, 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 way more impactful than hurting the feelings of a single mom. And you know who normally would have done that in the past? Her father, her mother would have stepped in and said, you probably shouldn't sleep with that guy. He's bad news, right? But now, like, you have how many generations into single motherhood are we? Like 3? So
yeah.
we're like 3 generations in to single motherhood. So you have multiple generations removed from a standard. So a girl, for example, that's hitting puberty and becoming sexually active today, her mother was herself sexually active as a teenager and also made the same mistakes. And she has probably not internalized the fact that it was her decisions that made that. So instead, she continues to perpetuate that same behavior. She's going to repeat it, or at least there's a high chance of it.
Let me put it this way. We say that it's it's a negative behavior, but what the government has done is the government has actually made being a single mother a sensible choice. Like a choice. Like a lot of the girls talk about who engage in this. They say, well, it gives them status, they get money, they get their own home. Like, that makes it a on a purely mercenary level, a choice that makes sense. That's what we've done. And then women choose this, and we are basically incentivizing social decay. And incidentally, single motherhood is not actually, it doesn't actually create a very high degree of fertility. It actually lowers fertility overall. Like, they do have children, but overall there's actually fewer children. So if you compared a neighborhood that had lots of single mothers to a neighborhood that has a father and a mother and kids, the neighborhood with a father and mother and kids overall will have a higher birth rate than single mothers.
Yeah.
So the very best and most fertile that humans are is when we're paired up and we're having children. And one of the reasons why is because those children become more successful, so they can actually form families themselves. Because there's actually sort of what's interesting to me is there and correct me if I'm wrong, because you've had experience of this. In these communities, there are the men who are visible, the gang leaders, the drug pushers, right? And they're getting the women. But then there seems to be this underclass of men who just disappear completely. They're just gone.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, a lot of them, I think, just end up, living in a room in their mom's house or in the basement.
Yeah.
Just or disappearing into drugs.
They just erode themselves. Like, they just get into, like you said, they get into addictions. They get into a malaise of, like, existing if they get like an honest job or whatever, but they don't really have prospects. They don't know how to navigate the world. They don't have anything to model their themselves after, except their peer group, and a lot of those guys also don't have a father to model themselves after. So they're learning about what it means to be a man from other men who don't know what it means to be a man.
Yeah, so they just sort of get lost, and then I imagine there's a lot of girls who get lost too, and maybe don't even want to be part of this whole process. So the overall reproductive rate is quite low, whereas with the healthy community with family formation, the overall reproductive rate is higher. But let's get into this more.
All right, I'll play more of the video. Okay.
In eras when there isn't a safety net. Like you really are facing some very difficult choices, and that's of course
first of all, this is not actually true. Before our era, the church had the safety net. The church was actually better at getting compliance to child support in the 1500s than the state is today. For whatever reason, but that's they had child support in the 1500s, and the state was responsible for collecting it, and they were actually pretty good at it.
But I presume the church also would hold people to like a standard as well, and the government incentivizes the opposite.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah. Okay.
Traditional norms around not hooking up with some random guy exist because that's a catastrophic outcome for the mother, for her children, for her family, etc. I guess the welfare state exists. The welfare state can now cushion that blow at a very high cost. It's still really rough being a single mother dependent on welfare. It's also true that it probably removes some of that immediate feedback to bad norms, and therefore allows us to continue thinking that these norms are okay. And also particularly when, of course, the people who are expressing luxury beliefs, they're not really worried about their daughters becoming teenagers.
Okay, so yeah, so she's basically talking about people who are affluent. They're not worried about this issue.
Well, they support it because it doesn't affect them. It's like, the anti-natalist people, they usually have kids. They're usually married. The feminists, they're usually married if they're not political lesbians, 2 men, and they have kids with them. Actually, I think there was even a very famous lesbian feminist that married a man and 2. I can't remember who it was. Was it Dworkin? That would have been, But I think. Anyway, no, there was one of the Triggernometry guys was the guy on the left. He shamed deadbeat dads. He said he got really upset about it.
Okay, I think that we're getting to that.
Oh, okay. Should I keep playing this then?
Keep playing.
Right.
Single mums or whatever, right? Because it's so class-based. So.
I agree with you. I also think as well that when it comes to talking about single mums, we talk about single mums a lot. We don't talk about the men who know that they have children and have walked away from their responsibilities. And as someone who used to be a teacher, you can all drink now, I've said it. That used to make me so angry.
Except that we do all the time. Everyone. I don't know where you get this. Why don't we talk about the men though? Because it literally is everywhere. Like almost every commentator that discusses problems in society, that gets it right that there is an issue with single motherhood, that gets it right of all of the potential consequences of single motherhood, what could happen to those children, that gets it right in terms of the removal from your own your sort of familial ancestry. You don't know your father, but you also don't know your grandfather or your grandmother on your father's side or your aunts and uncles, and you don't know where you come from and all of that. They can get all of those things right and still think, oh, but what we need is to hold men responsible. No, what you don't understand is the men that these women are choosing 9 times out of 10 have no interest in being responsible, and the women know it and they do it anyway. So it's the women who are being irresponsible. They're being irresponsible with their vaginas. And that's what they have to choose men who are going to stick around.
Yeah, but here's the other thing, okay? And this is maybe what we're seeing in Canada with drug use. We take away all the stigma. We make it easy. We pay for the drugs, and it proliferates. But is it at what point does government become complicit when it constructs a situation where making bad choices becomes sensible? Because you're saying it's women's irresponsibility with their vaginas, but when you look at the situation that these women are in, and you look at their options, it actually makes sense why they're choosing welfare, why they're choosing this particular man. So we have constructed a situation where this is a sensible choice, is what's happening. And we can talk about irresponsibility, but we've also constructed a situation where the irresponsible choice has become sensible. All right. And that's, I think, the big problem. And honestly, as long as selecting the irresponsible father who's going to walk away becomes the sensible choice because somebody else will pay for it, then that's what you're going to get. And blaming the dad is ridiculous. Blaming the father is ridiculous. Because I guess, well, first of all, like you were talking about earlier, these are often criminals. They're not going to give a crap.
No.
About what your expectations are as a doughy white guy.
Women are selecting them because of their criminal status. Because it's like, in those environments where that happens. So, it's like...
Well, there was a woman who went on one of these channels and said, who am I going to choose? Like, I'm going to choose a man who I feel like can protect me, even though he probably won't bother. You probably, you're like baby mama number 27, so he doesn't give a crap. But I would choose a man who I feel like he's going to protect me because I live in a dangerous environment. And you live in a dangerous environment because the local economy is destroyed, because there is no opportunities for young men, because the government moved in and basically outcompeted them. So these young men no longer have to construct an economy in cooperation with each other, or no longer have the ability to do so. Right? So, yeah. But the thing is that she's choosing this man because in the absence of a productive economy where young men are gaining a pro-social status, it makes sense to choose the criminal. I mean, he's the guy with the freaking income. He's the guy who offers something, even if it's just protection.
Well, yeah, he'll protect her kids, potentially, with violence. Right.
So what's astounding to me is that when we're looking at that situation, you've constructed a situation in which every single choice that woman is making is sensible, and that is the problem. Yeah. Now, let's finish what he has to say about shaming deadbeat dads. Let's shame government. Let's do some government shaming. How about that?
How about that?
Yeah.
This made me so angry because I could see the damage it did to these kids. Having an absent father, or actually even worse, having a dad who one day wanted to play dad, and then for a couple of months couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, I'm just dropping in and out.
That's usually a walk-on dad. That's usually a situationship with a guy who's just playing dad for a couple months.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to just blame the men, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, that's the easiest thing to do. That's why we keep doing it over and over again. To our doom. Okay, let's finish this segment. It's just a few more minutes.
Which is actually worse from the effects that I saw.
Yeah, it's true. And hey, I mean, the fact that single mums get shamed more than deadbeat dads, which I think generally they do, is dreadful because they're the ones who hung around. They're the ones who made the commitment.
No, they don't.
Well, the women. What about the ones who throw their baby in a dumpster? I would imagine that of the ones that allowed their baby to live, yes, they hung around because they had to, but there's also, like you just said, Alison, incentives for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the difference. The government pays single mothers to exist, and it criminalizes deadbeat dads. Let's be honest. Like, it is to be a father is a criminal offense in our penal code. You cannot tell me in that context that deadbeat or men who are not in the household with their children are not stigmatized more. Okay.
Right.
It is not a criminal offense to be a single mother. And what I mean by it is a criminal offense to be a single father is that the government will fine you if you are a single father.
Mm-hmm.
They will fine you. They will take money from you, right? Because you're a single father, and they will uphold none of your rights to your child. So they'll take money from you. That is, I mean, before we had justice systems, before we had prisons, fines were how a society applied a criminal punishment to people it considered to be wrongdoers. So we treat single fathers like wrongdoers, right? I mean, there's even cases where men who have the children have to pay, regardless. So we treat that as like a class of wrongdoers. We treat them like criminals. And then we take that money and we add to it and we give it to the women. So we are treating the women, single mothers, like paid government employees, and single fathers like criminals. And somehow that is not stigma enough. Or that's for whatever reason, we're stigmatizing the thing that we don't regard as criminal, which is being a single mom. And we're not stigmatizing the thing that we do regard, which is criminal, which is being a father who does not take responsibility, financial responsibility for his children. Let's be honest. That is considered a crime. That is considered a crime. And yet we don't stigmatize it enough? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's ridiculous. But the other thing is that we are paying for this. We're paying for single mothers to exist. Who knows what would happen if we stopped paying? Maybe they'd leave their kids to the father. But it's like this let's get away from single mom shaming and single dad shaming. Let's just shame the government for constructing this whole shitty scenario in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just shame the idiots in government. All right, let's
What's the next bit?
okay,
what?
just well, the other thing I was going to say is that judging from the statistics, there may be a heck of a lot of men who didn't even have any choice in the conception of the child too.
Yeah.
You know, like what about them? Like,
well, yeah, exactly.
Men have no choice. So if they get raped, then and they don't want to pay for the resultant baby because it was a rape baby, that doesn't matter. They're going to be criminals because of that. Like a guy can be a criminal because he got raped. This is freaking astounding to me. Can be treated like a criminal because he got raped. But men also don't have any option to walk away from children they don't want. Women do. So every child survived their mother saying, well, I could have an abortion, or came about because a woman said, well, I'm not going to avail myself of the entire buffet of reproductive or contraceptive options that are available to me that are reversible, right? You know, so that child was wanted on some level by the woman. Can't say the same about the man. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's what's really funny about this whole conversation about forced natalism. Like, we already do it to men.
True.
Okay.
All right, what's the next? Should I play more? Or is it,
143.
all right, 1 minute 43. Is this the last one?
Yep, the last one. What's wrong?
I don't know. I got to refresh.
Oh boy. And then we're going to get an ad.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
they
might
wanted
get
to
an ad.
like
No,
that.
no, we didn't get an ad. Just fine.
Well, you know what? I could probably just say what it is.
No, I got it right
I
here.
think I've maybe become. There were certain things that I sort of wavered on in the book. So you know, to summarize very briefly, like the argument of the book is that sexual revolution is often presented by progressives as being unambiguously good for women. My argument is actually there's been cost to women and to men in lots of important ways, and that there's wisdom in some old sexual norms which we've thrown out the window post-sexual revolution, and actually, like, there's a lot to be said for resurrecting them. So marriage is one example, that actually marriage is really good for protecting the interests of women and children in a lot of ways. And
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. So that's basically where we started with all of that. And I think we went through all of the issues, all of the things that are annoying to me in this.
Yeah.
I don't know where people get off thinking that single, like, fathers who don't pay for their kids aren't subject to more stigma than single moms. They certainly are. Even though in many cases they had absolutely no say in the production of the child. And I mean no say, as in, yeah, flat out raped.
Yeah.
You know, and then also, like, what were the other things that they were talking about? It's just, you know what, we went through it. Let's not go through it again. I think that's good.
We can do a part 2. They talk about
do part 2.
Rome. They talk about Rome later on, so
Ooh,
you might be able to, yeah, you might be able to get your fix of Rome.
Well, they did mention Rome briefly, so there's that.
Yeah, but they go into a little bit more later. So
Okay. I think I've talked a lot. I think I did most of the talking, but that's what we were aiming for, right? Okay.
that's what we were hoping for.
Let's do the things.
We got a super chat. We got a super chow though.
Oh, we got a super.
You should read it. Yeah, from Richard Pierre.
Okay, all right. Richard Beer gives us $5, says, so Allison says that we would need 4 additional Earths to be able to supply the resource demands of women. Perhaps we can order one from Amazon, one from Alibaba, one from Tenmu, which depending on their promotion might be free, and one from IKEA, which would be delivered in a flat pack that would have to be assembled by the recipient. It would come with a lot of screws and several specialty hex and Torx wet wrenches that aren't available anywhere else, though.
And of course, the men will have to put that one together.
Yeah. Then the thing is, the men will have to put it all together, but get no credit for it, and won't be considered more attractive by the women.
No, it's not.
Good Lord. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. We'll get those 4 extra Earths. Let's order them up. All right. So if you would like to send us a super chow like that one, feedthebadger.com/justthetip. You can do so at any point after the show if you just want to say, hey, thanks. You're not screaming into the void. We hear you. We like what you have to say. Once again, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you would like to help us out for the month, that's feedthebadger.com/support to make sure we can bring you this delectable content from a very unique angle. Lots of interesting thoughts. So once again, feedthebadger.com/support. I do want to do a thank you to the Great Indoors for making this requested video and for supporting us to the tune of $500. So thank you, the Great Indoors. And if you want to join Great Indoors and our other very generous supporters, feedthebadger.com/support. Back to you, Brian.
All right. I will do the outro. Again, sorry for my voice. It's getting better every day. Hopefully I'll sound normal by next week. I don't know. But I wanted to say that the vertical short version of this stream has almost 30 people watching and a lot of new people I've never seen before. So if you guys are interested, you should check out our regular channel where we have the regular layouts of the same streams. Just go to Badger Live Streams. Has a little bit more interactivity, and that's where a lot of our other folks watch. But it's nice to have you guys visit us and check us out. So that's pretty cool. We basically went almost at 100 people watching when you put both streams together, which is higher than our usual. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us on the show. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame. We'll talk to you all in the next one.
Better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.